I have been charged to somehow conduct this panel. So I invite you folks, what are your questions? What would you like to hear from us? We represent a broad scale of skills and interests and expertise, so please.
And we have microphones here.
Okay. I'll just make a comment.
Yeah, why don't
I have
you
to
say
challenge Janos a little bit on,
yes,
on
yes,
the statement
yes.
about Europe. I guess I'm representing the EU, Europe, yeah, even though at the moment Switzerland is not on the best terms with the rest of the EU, thanks to initiatives and immigration and so on. But I think the comment about cyber physical systems gaining traction in Europe or not, the words maybe were not easy to pitch, but the research agenda had been there from the beginning of the 2000s, under Alkis Konstantelos, under different names and different initiatives. But the research agenda itself had been there, and actually has been also in the latest, up to the latest call now under the name cyber physical systems. It mutated into systems of systems. At some point it was CPSOS, cyber physical systems of systems, and the other thing is that Europe, EU is one central authority that is visible and easy to contact. But actually Europe, the funding also works at different levels. There's also national levels. And at the national level also there is interest in these initiatives. That depends a lot on the country and depends a lot on what the interests are. In Switzerland, energy is very big at the moment because they have pragmatic concerns about where their energy is going to come from. So they have a lot of initiatives on this. Germany, they call it Industry 4.0, but it's still similar research agenda, only under different names. So.
Would you like to say something?
No, maybe a comment. All the names you mentioned, Janos and Rujana, I had the fortune of working with many of them, including Alkis, who was very supportive of. All of these folks have been very supportive of industry working together with academia in the research programs. So have been, co-workers on many DARPA programs as well as European programs. In fact, when John went to Switzerland, we still continue to work on projects, European-funded projects, because we have a research lab in Prague, and through that we work together. So it has been a great collaboration between not only different countries, but also industry and academia. I think that's very valuable.
So, audience, questions? Yes, please, please.
I have a very easy question. I have a good lunch and 2, so I only ask one easy question. It's about name. Yes. So in our community and other communities, we call the cyber-physical system. Everybody understand. And in other field, even you talk to the computer science, they only understand IoT, Internet of Things. So I'm just wondering, can you tell us what's your comment? Because like a smart city in our community is, it's a cyber-physical system. In other areas, oh no, it's Internet of Things. I know if you read word by word, they are not exactly the same, but by large, they overlapped.
Yeah, that's the typical first thing. So the easy way to put aside this question is to see the IoT, the industrial internet, the Industry 4.0, the open. These are platforms to build cyber-physical systems. It has tremendous traction because industry wants to sell platforms. These are usually the industry-driven, but it doesn't change the fact that these facilitate to create live cyber-physical systems. And the research agenda in the cyber-physical system is to understand those systems that we build on the top of this platform, how they behave, how we can guarantee property for them, how we can secure them, how we can make sure that they are safe. So there is absolutely no conflict. There is no. It's not about IoT or cyber-physical system. IoT, again, is a platform to build cyber-physical systems.
I like to add to that, namely, we in Berkeley coined this word HCPS, human cyber-physical system. And in recognition that the cyber-physical systems don't stand alone, but that they interact with people, and if we really want to have some safety, provability of convergence and performance, measures of performance, we have to somehow include them in our models and prediction the human as well. So the interesting challenge from my point of view comes in that it used to be that it included, let's say, the automata theory and the control theory people and the real-time operating systems people and the signal processing people. Okay, now what we are faced with is we have to somehow include also human-computer interaction people who deal with these issues of how to display, how to deliver the information to the human so that the human can properly react to it, and that the information that you are delivering to a human is useful to the human rather than to the machine.
I completely endorse that. In fact, we don't like Internet of Things as a title or a subject title because that does not represent the humans. And I would go one step beyond and saying it's not just delivering information to humans, but using humans as sensors and actuators also. For example, in this room, right now there are probably, the environment is controlled by a bunch of sensors on the wall. There's just one. But there are 100 of us. And it really doesn't matter what the sensor on the wall thinks, it's what we think. So can we, there is a startup that started here called Building Robotics. It will allow you to tell how comfortable you are, and then the HVAC system can be controlled to make you comfortable, not make that little sensor on the wall. So that's, that human element is very, very important. So I would say cyber physical is much broader. If you add H, even better.
Yes. Other comments, questions, please. Yes.
Yeah, since the previous panelists just mentioned the program from the US and the Europe, so I'm just wondering, do you know anything joint efforts between Asia and the US or Europe, like China, Japan, India, other places?
Want to comment?
Yes,
yeah,
I can make a few comments. So actually, Department of Energy has been quite progressive in this fashion, and especially from an energy perspective. So energy efficiency, renewable, and then this whole smart grid area, integration of renewables in the grid. There were some presentations in the morning. That area has been very active in Department of Energy, where they have joint programs with China, as well as with China State Grid, and then also they have joint programs with India, separate ones. So there is a US-China joint program, US-India joint program. And in fact, the LBNL teams are involved here at Berkeley in those.
In Europe, there's, again, it's Europe-wide and national level, and actually at both levels there is collaborations. They're not massive programs, not very big initiatives. They're more meant to foster interactions among academics, for example, less so for industry. But there is, at the EU level, there's also, for example, joint program with India to support exchanges. And I know in Switzerland, also with India and with China, there's joint research projects. Again, not mega projects, but more for two teams to work together by jointly supervising PhD students and so on and so forth. So there is activity.
So the collaboration is not under the name of CPS, it's under the name for example, a smart grid or the Industry 4.0.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, speak up.
So It is a fact that programs such as the DARPA Grand Challenge and the DARPA Urban Challenge have been extremely successful in fostering innovation. In that case was for autonomous driving. So do you think that something similar for CPS would be valuable, like creating a CPS Grand Challenge, for instance? And if so, do you have an idea what could be?
I can put up my prejudices. DARPA is extremely good in making very short-term, at least the last few years, not when Shankar was there, but last few years, and certainly in robotics, very short-term demonstrations. Now, on one hand, and Aaron Ames is here and he can tell us his personal experiences with such a program. From my perception, the positive thing is that it pushes certain groups, and they have to be substantially large engineering groups to compete in these competitions. But it pushes to put together systems that are innovative, but they are typically very engineering oriented. My concern is, coming certainly from the NSF end of things, is that we need, that part is fine, but we, in addition to that, need long-range investment so that we can ask some really hard questions that are not going to lead to every 3 months publications that some of our students think that they should do. Okay, that those hard problems maybe take a year, 2. And as I showed in my presentation, that there are certain program managers who really understood that, at least in the past, and were able to create 10 years program. And that's what seems to me that for solving the next quantitative step we need. That's my prejudicial view.
So if I look again, the requested justification for creating joint programs, it would be fantastic to have a grand challenge articulated, right? And where with possibly well-specified leave-behinds after the program. So it's much easier to tell that we want to build an accelerator, a new accelerator, a super collider, and the US and Europe will come together, do it, and that's done, and it's fantastic. To justify this from the point of view which really takes science ahead, that we like to work together, we challenge each other, we will have faster progress in this, it sounds softer, right? So it's always effective to try to find grand challenges. And
Bruno, I was at NSF when the physics department argued extremely successfully for a 10-year program in detecting gravitational waves. It was $100 million program because they had to build this huge laser system for I don't know how many kilometers. Guess what? This was 2000. Today is 2016, and only 2016 they detected the first gravitational waves. It's a huge success for physics, but it took 16 years of continuous investment and persistence of those physicists to get that. And to me, our problems are not any more noble, important, and difficult than those. Yeah, Shankar.
Yeah, Janusz, these two industrial consortia, this Industrial Internet Consortium and this so just for everybody else, Janos has been oh,
Should be on.
Thank you. So, to this tune, there's two industrial consortia that he mentioned, this Industrial Internet Consortium and OpenFog, which is the Intel-Microsoft consortium.
Yeah, I don't think you are talking to a microphone.
Okay, the Industrial Internet Consortium, which GE kicked off with a number of other folks, and the OpenFog Consortium, which was kicked off, I think, Cisco, Microsoft, Intel, etc. But I'm addressing it both to Datta and what do you think is the role of those consortia in really addressing, both of you said it quite gently when Hervé asked about platforms versus CPS, but what do you think these consortia will help accelerate, both from the industry standpoint and the research standpoint?
Yeah, so what's the huge significance of the fact that we have two of these industrial consortium is that was a major step toward creating these public-private partnerships that were envisioned in that kitchen cabinet on the OSDP on how the field should progress. Industry indeed puts money now in creating these platforms and in creating basically vertical pilots. The Industrial Internet Consortium is about piloting future products that have very strong CPS content in every sense. But these are verticals and pilots and very product close. The Industrial Internet Consortium is heavily proprietary. So you have to be member, there are strong proprietary rules and so forth. The OpenFog is a different construct. That's ultimately it was conceived by Intel, and those folks at Intel who also were heavily involved in the Industrial Internet Consortium, but they wanted to create horizontals. Again, the OpenFog is a platform program. It's an industry-driven platform program. I see here a huge opportunity that when the university researcher, or generally the research community who is engaged in CPS, wants to have large-scale testbeds. The OpenFog consortium and what's emerging there can provide this, can provide the underlying platforms for building this. The only missing link here to understand how to put this government and private money link in a well-defined shape. And that's actually, that conversation is going on right now in the OpenFog, that there are different opportunities that are popping up, NNMI related and others, that can really give foundations for putting the academic side and the industry side together in this, particularly in OpenFog. So I think that the right way to look these industry-driven consortia is that finally, when we need to make argument to the government that industry is interested, it's not only about testimonials that are given on VP level or above, as we usually have to deliver, but these are facts, that there is now a consortium with 240 members, which is the Industry Internet. There is another consortium, the FORB, which has now 34 members, but it was just founded a few years ago, 1 year ago or less. So these are really hardcore things, and it's an extremely good development.
It's a good consortium to create interoperability, but at the end of the day, it is basically driven by industrial companies, and they have, one objective is to make more money and sell more stuff, right? So one of the things that's still missing, and maybe where government can play a role, is the societal problems. They will not solve any of the societal problems. They will not solve the electric grid, how to make it robust against, plugging in electric vehicles and solar rooftops and all that. How do we manage all this renewable integration in the grid? That won't be solved directly. Transportation problems, whether it is ground transportation, trains, buses, airplanes, that won't be solved. So those kinds of things, water networks, that won't be solved. So those issues still need some other overlay on top of these to say, okay, now the industry has come up with open protocols so systems can talk to each other. How can we use it for the common good of the society?
Different kind of problems. Where industry can make money versus societal needs.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like your thoughts on how to teach the new generation of students for CPS. We just saw the Jacob Center atmosphere of a way of teaching. The students are coming in having to learn a broad range of interdisciplinary skills to be able to contribute to CPS versus, like Rajendra, what you were talking about, when we form our teams, we have people from all these different areas who are experts. But the students these days are more broad, right? So I'd like your thoughts on maybe education and also bringing in industry into that, like with this, projects that are like what Datta just talked about in terms of the students' interests.
Claire was involved. We redesigned the introductory course in EE, right? Would you like to say a few words about that, Claire?
So we designed and taught this past year this new sequence for freshmen in EECS called EE16A and B. So it's a 2-semester sequence. We actually require all of our EECS undergrads to take it. So enrollment is like 780 in 16A this past spring. But it's a course which really tries to bring together it introduces them to linear algebra and a little bit of signal processing, and circuits, and all through labs. And it's all done in Python. So I had to learn Python, which was actually very good. Thank you, Stephen. For example, 16A, the first course, there are 4 modules. The first module is about imaging. So they had to build a little camera, and we taught them vectors and matrices and operate linear algebra operations through this. And we had a GPS, we had a positioning module where they measured their position relative. So we taught them least squares optimization. They had to figure out where they were relative to some beacons in the lab. All the way through the last module in 16B was a robotics module, and they combined their signal processing with robotics, and they had to build a little, we provided them the platform, a little robot that would detect, there were 2 music sources, rock and classical, and they had to detect the classical and the rock and go towards one of them. They were given instructions on how they had to parse it and control it accordingly. And I think courses like that, where it goes from the principles to the algorithms to the embedded platforms, they help. And the main purpose, I think the underlying purpose for us, we replaced, we had to replace some courses to put this in. That we actually replaced Math 54, although that's still controversial, which is our linear algebra, and the signals, the introductory signals and systems course, and the introductory circuits course. So 3 courses got replaced with these 2. They're still probably taking Math 54, so it's probably going to be 2 courses for 2 courses. But the idea was to show our freshmen design problems at the freshman level. So it counterparts, because in sequence they're also taking CS 61A and B, where they're learning, they're learning basic, not basic programming, but they're learning how to design programs. And there's quite interesting design problems given there. So we wanted the counterpart for the kind of EE side. And I think that I'd say it's been successful. The students, I mean, there's problems when you have such a big lab-driven course, but I think the idea, we're definitely getting, well, okay, so speaking personally, we're definitely getting more students into our upper division robotics and signals and systems and signal processing courses because of this. So maybe that's a small perspective from a freshman level, at least.
I teach a 2-semester course in robotics. In fact, the spring the second semester, I co-taught with Shankar and Ken Goldberg, and we basically covered the book of Introduction to Robotics that was with Richard Murray, Shankar, and Shisheng Li. We covered that whole book over 2 semesters. So, and every week we have labs. So we have 3 robotic arms. In fact, two robots have 2 arms. So we have 5 arms, if you wish, and a lot of cameras and also mobile little. So also in Ed Lee has a separate course on embedded systems, real-time operating systems, and Ron Fearing has also another course in kind of control robotics control. So there are at least 3 different ways how the students can pick up the tools for the cyber-physical system. And of course, there are the standard linear systems courses.
I just want to add one comment. Is actually in my perhaps limited experience, it also goes even beyond that. I mean, we have initiatives going even to high schools and primary schools now, trying to attract people to this way of thinking. And that's perhaps a European problem that's being solved with this. Is European industry is in need of engineers, and they're not getting enough, especially Germany, Switzerland. So we are collaborating with ABB, for example, to go develop kits that we take to high schools, robotic kits that the children can very simple programming, very simple construction. It has to be very standardized. But they can develop something that they will see working and take it home with them. This is also intended to attract more women to engineering, because there's, by the time they get to finish the high school, people are a little bit settled in their ways. If you go very early and you just expose them to this, they may get excited and attracted by this. So we have a very conscious effort at ETH trying to do this, either us going to the high schools and training teachers and giving week-long project-based courses or a day-long project-based courses for the children to get used to this, or bringing them in and spending a week, the older ones, 16, 17-year-olds, spending a week designing something, developing something, and so getting attracted to, in particular, robotics and problems like this.
Let me make a plug here for Fernando.
Yeah,
I have a question. So, what about the traditional stuff like operational amplifiers, circuits? Where are students learning that? Because some of the courses that have been replaced used to cover that material. Are you guys assuming that that material is now covered early?
We teach all
Well, probably many students that take it, they don't quite grasp it.
Yeah, go ahead. You want to
so,
with a plug.
So another aspect of the education story, which is the NSF supported thing. Vanderbilt has a small school of engineering, so the course offering for engineering students cannot be gigantic when you have a very limited size faculty. So the approach in this context is to do design studios and student competitions. Design studios for cyber-physical systems, and drive the whole thing, motivate the whole thing with student competitions. NSF started funding the creation of these student competitions and publishing the competitions, supporting the competitions through the CPS Virtual Organization. And let me bring up some examples. Jonathan is building, one student competition, which is UAV created. Rahul has a fantastic competition idea for Formula One car, small size Formula One car, which is again very interesting. Vanderbilt is doing it, and Rahul, I hope he will get the supplement to integrate it into the VO. And I know several of these initiatives that are coming online. So I think that that's a very effective way to give the CPS perspective and motivation.
I just would add one little sentence that over the lunch we discussed, there is a profound dilemma currently in education of engineering, and that is, since the amount of knowledge has grown substantially since I was a student in electrical engineering, what is the compromise between the foundational knowledge versus the new stuff that is coming up, and how do you reconcile this tension between the new stuff and the foundation on which you are building this new stuff? I'll give you an example. There is a tremendous excitement among some of my students in the robotics using all these packages. ROS has all kinds of packages. Let me tell you, in Baxter, for example, your hand is here and you want to move there. Guess what? If you use the package forward kinematics, it will do this, all right? And in meantime, smash everything that is around. Well, what really this requires that the students are willing to go below that package and look at the guts. And not everybody is willing to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, going back to some of the earlier remarks, Janusz mentioned a remark that the Internet of Things is a platform for CPS, and then Ruzhena also mentioned human-machine interaction. So if you are allowed to look beyond that, and we consider another buzzword that is out there, that is crowdsourcing. So can we then think about an extension of cyber-physical systems where we have not only presenting the information to the single human, but we also have sensory information among different humans, and then there is coordination issues that we need to model among the humans. So now we have a hybrid systems where hybrid really refers to the human component. And since we do have social scientists that start talking about human computing, should we also get into this as engineers and model, what the power of humans sharing the cyber-physical system is capable of?
I guess that's Force's story, so it's better if Shankar comments. Anyways, that's the...
Shankar.
No.
Any other burning questions? I think, yeah, Praveen, yeah, welcome.
I have a question. That mentioned societal problems.
Right.
And my question is, all this training in CPS, robotics, what have you.
Yes.
Provide you any particular skills that will even formulate those problems, or will they formulate them in such a narrow technological viewpoint that most of the social issues are sidestepped?
Good question.
So,
yeah.
So probably if I look at the newer initiatives that are coming through NSF primarily, that's what I follow now. The smart city, the urban science, the food, energy, water, and these are initiatives that are arriving from the societal problem side and end up basically translating those into a cyber-physical system problem. So that's the hope that it will happen. So we had a workshop in Budapest on controversial issues of CPS, and actually that was one question that when you look at the smart cities, urban science, and these top-level intentions, whether the translation into deep cyber-physical problems happened or not, because in many ways the impression is that the articulation of these problems is still shallow. And indeed, coming back what you mentioned, if we want to understand if humans are involved in the feedback loop and decision mechanisms are part of the overall feedback loop, then indeed PTD problems are coming that are addressed in Forces in Shankar's project on how to influence human decision making through incentive mechanisms and game theoretical tools that close the overall loop. So I see that there is no contradiction between the two, but it's a hard work to translate these large societal scale problems into a deep technical agenda. But I think that Forces is one example where actually this issue is deeply examined.
Actually, I would just reinforce the point. I think what is happening is that the community is expanding even further. So there's, we're working with marketing people, for example, and economists on demand response schemes where you have to bring in humans into electricity demand response schemes. You have to bring in humans into the loop to get them to participate. So there's a little bit of division of labor at the moment with us formulating the technical problems and them looking at the human side. But there is work going on how would you couple the two? How would you couple the human decision making and the way you can influence that to the cyber physical part? And similar, we have a project in more education, trying to personalize education with pitching content to students, and that's with educational psychologists. So even though the technical people don't have the expertise there, you can enlarge the team and bring in this expertise that you need to formulate the problem from the social down to the technical.
Just a follow-up comment. I agree with everything that was said, but my quarrel, nevertheless, is that we are like a frog in the bottom of a well, and that's all we see. And therefore, everything is formulated in decisionistic terms. We got to understand how my neighbor makes decisions, and then I'm comfortable, right? Because I can put that sort of framework. And I'm wondering whether that framework itself is so limited, right, in the bottom of the well, that what's going on outside the well is completely escapes us.
Yeah, I agree. The way I even look at, let's take the example of smart grid, and now millions and millions of homes are connected to somebody's cloud, right? Either it is the Nest thermostats you have on your wall and then connected to Google, or Honeywell thermostats connected to Honeywell, or any other competitor. Millions and millions, pretty soon it will be 10%, 20%. Now, the residential energy consumption is about 30–35% of the total, and about half of that is your air conditioning in summer. So that you can influence very quickly and easily, and utilities have very narrow view. This is what I want to do, right? They have incentivized so much of solar power in California that PG&E started saying, stop giving incentives because I can't integrate that into the grid. People just put solar power on their own home. So now you have solar power on the home, your thermostat is connected to the internet, and you will bring in an electric car in your garage. It's a non-trivial problem. How do you get all of this to work together, and your voltage imbalance and all of that will be maintained, right? The kind of problems we discussed in the morning. And has to be thought of from a much broader perspective and bring in, the deep cyber physical theories, and what are all my neighbors going to be rational? Are they going to make the right decision? is very, very important. And I don't see anybody doing that right now, so it's an opportunity. Same thing on transportation side.
I'm afraid that our time has expired. Thank you very much to the panelists, and happy birthday.